Hey everyone, good morning, greetings, how are you? Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to the Starseed Ministry. It is July 18th, 2022. Welcome back, everyone, after a couple of days of respite and the weekend. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for being here. I have to say, my friends, that I'm really going to be transitioning these streams over to other platforms. It just became so clear that considering the fact that most of my comment section on YouTube is infested with porn bots every single time I broadcast, it was just like I have to make the change, right? I have to commit to the process of supporting and utilizing platforms that are not going to pretty much just infest my space with the bots. So I'm just letting you know now, because that's going to be a transition that is on its way to Rumble and Odyssey. They both have streaming capacity, so I'll be using probably either one or both of them to stream the broadcast from Catalyst Energies. But in the meantime, I hope everyone is doing well. You had a wonderful couple of days. It is the Starseed Ministry today. I'm going to talk a little bit about what the sun is doing. We're going to look at this reading that came through this morning. Wow. For those who are subscribed to the Catalyst Classroom, I posted on Friday the third session of this month's theme about Black Moon Lilith, and it was involving primarily the starseed origins of Sirius and Procyon. So that was posted on Subscribestar on Friday, and I had a very special channeled message and light language transmission from my dear friend and colleague and truly part of Galactic Tribe here, Kiana from Aurora Creative Healing. And so that was, wow, it was so powerful. So I'm going to share the flyer with you real quick, just so you know. So if you're interested in this content and you want to actually get the whole month's worth of sessions, they are pre-recorded. There is a link to the PowerPoint that I use for all of this stuff. So you can just link in the description box below to get to Subscribestar, and it's $5 a month. You get weekly content. We do pretty consistent Zoom gatherings for the Starseed Fellowship, and this channeling was just so powerful. I really felt it in the heart space. It just expanded this area so much, and then in a lot of ways was it was like a pump in some ways out through the throat chakra, through our expression, our own vibration, the creation of our own, and not only creation, but the expression of our own unique resonance, our own voice. And so that was very powerful. So for those of you who are subscribed and had a chance to watch your video and listen to the full transcript of the channeling, man, what did you think? I was pretty blown away. And so we're going to be doing an event here for the 8/8 Lionsgate. There will be promotional content to come. So if you're not on my email list, you can link to that and get on that through the description box below as well. So I just wanted to share that because it's so much part of the Cancerian theme that is just entirely woven into the experience right now. So we had a Sun Mercury Cazimi this weekend. Right? They had a conjunction at 25 degrees Cancer, 24, 25 degrees Cancer. The Procyon story is so strong right now in terms of what's going on in the astrology and certainly what's going on out in the world. So, and in our lives as well. So it has been an incredible weekend. On the surface, it didn't seem like much was going on at least for me, other than the usual. But what I found was there were so many opportunities surrounding me as I consistently and very intentionally wanted to create space after this really strong super full moon in Capricorn that was a temporal marker in some ways, and a reconnection coming almost full circle to Saturn Pluto conjunction in January 2020 in terms of, where are we growing from, as opposed to the channeling that Kiana gave from the Syrians, which is, are we wearing our defeat as a badge of honor, or are we growing from that place, the fertilizing experience of what would be considered a defeat or a failure. So, and we're in a position now to not only address our obstacles and really lean into them, and now it's about really making the commitment, like committing to the process. Venus is in Cancer now, and Mars in Taurus, right? So now they're going to be in more of a favorable connection with each other in terms of their relationship. They'll be in a sextile when they finally come into alignment with each other again. And the sun, the sun and Mercury in turn, right? Today, Mercury will be opposite Pluto. Tomorrow, the sun will be opposite Pluto, really highlighting this theme here of like, where is your home, right? Where is your loyalty, your faithfulness? Where is your energy really residing, so that when you do step forward with your own unique voice, with that Leo energy that is really going to be very, very strong, I feel like, this summer. What is the container that holds the sensitivity, the vulnerability, the intensity of your emotional self, that in fact is really not even the charge, but holds the space and is the emotional energy that really allows for that expression. And so very much like the activation I got from Kiana's channeling, with the heart expanding and opening and out through the voice, I'm of the opinion at this point that, perhaps the Schumann is not what we think it is, but I'm still tracking it related to what the sun is doing. And I also feel like it's, it provides that counterbalance, or almost mirrors the same basic idea that when the heart is open and, there is a space of love and connection and guardianship and stewardship and custodianship, all of these type of Cancerian themes, when those are activated, when we create intentionally the space for that experience, not only within ourselves, but, with everyone around us, it really does fulfill that need to really express the fullness of our own resonance. And we have some choices to make, I think. In a lot of ways, at a soul level, the choices have already been made, right? We are converging into this point, and how we experience it is really our personal relationship to our journey, and how we express ourselves through that process is also up to us, right? It's like being, I'm going to show the Schumann here, and get moving into that in just a minute here. But it's like being on a speed slide, right? Or some sort of water slide, like a really strong one. Do you remember in the movie The Goonies, right? When towards the very end of the movie, when they finally get to the pirate ship, and there's that scene where they're all going down the water slide into the pool of water, and it's meant to be scary because they don't know where they're going, but it's also exciting because you're like, whoa, I'm going down this slide. That's what it's like. We're already going down the chute. That's been happening. It's what are we going to, how are we going to express ourselves about this experience along the way? And that is truly up to us. And when we feel insecure, if we are too reliant, I think, on the materium that Capricorn represents, as Pluto is destroying and eliminating all the barriers, we do have a choice in how we voice that experience, how we choose to accept that experience. What is it going to draw out of us? Is it going to draw out resentment and, foolishness, or just totally giving up? Or are we going to see this as an opportunity to really tap into some measure of joy, creativity, thrill, excitement? And the fifth house represents all of these things in astrology. But there's also an equally powerful expression of grief, right? Sadness can come through the fifth house because it's raw and it's combust in a lot of ways. And when you have strong connection to your family, to a spiritual ideal or community, your nation, right? Your tribal identity, your clan, right? Whatever that personal life or your inner power, right? Your spouse, the containment of the intimacy of your family life and your personal life, when that feels like it is not available or it's challenged in some way, or you're just going through the natural cycle of life where you lose and you gain. There's heartbreak, there's grieving, there's betrayal, there is dispersion in some way, and you still express that through the fifth house, and a lot of the way, through the fifth house. But it starts in terms of the sensitivity of the fourth house, and that's usually ruled by the moon, and that's our inner landscape. So the quality of that is going to determine what comes forward in terms of resonance. And like it or not, that then feeds into the Aquarian notion of the collective voice, of the collective consciousness. And part of the responsibility, I feel like, of moving into this next age of Aquarius, however you think about it, or the New Age movement, or any of this, is that we all need to take responsibility of what we are truly adding at a consciousness level and energetically and spiritually to the whole. And many, if not all of us, at some level have consciously decided we're going through this eye of the needle, this lion's gate together. And what comes out of it on the other side is based on how we collectively go into that space. And we have some choices to make. And we have to, I would say, we're being drawn to really not rely, but to tap into that inner voice again. And only that stillness and that quiet and a sense of boundary between us and everything else is going to allow us to establish that. So I'm going to check in with the stream here and see what's going on. Megan is wide awake in Tennessee. Good morning. It's good to see you, Megan. Are you back? I'm assuming you're back from your amazing trip. Alex K, better than mental difficulty. Will you expand on that in terms of what you're talking about, Alex K? In terms of, I say better than mental difficulty, technical difficulty. Yeah, there's no mental difficulty right this moment, in fact. And what's interesting is the only real astrological, at least Western astrology, the only real Gemini energy that's represented is Pallas Athena, but there's something very important about where she is today. So yes, better than a mental difficulty. Technical difficulty we can manage pretty easily. Mental difficulty takes a little bit more of that inner troubleshooting, I guess. And that's hard to do when you don't give yourself the space to do it. And it's probably for the best that we do what we can, right? And if we haven't started already, I feel like that it's almost infectious. And I think once the sun comes into Leo on the 22nd, especially into the 23rd, that type of infectious spread of the resonance, right, as it ripples out, is going to be really something that we're really identifying with, right, and is coming through our own voice. And the sun is powerful in Leo, right? It's home in Leo, so lots coming up. So guys, we see the Schumann over the weekend, right? This was Saturday. It got pretty loud. Sunday, it got really much louder. And even today, it's still having its peaks of amplification. And I don't know, right? I don't know. What I did see over the weekend, especially yesterday, if we move to this image, this is real interesting to me. This is the magnetosphere. This is in real time right now, as of this morning. Here, let me move this out of the way. So you can see. So what we're seeing is the density of the magnetosphere itself. And so the darker it is, the more dense. And when I say density, I mean it's truly like particles per cubic centimeter. And we're talking about plasma. We're talking about solar wind. We're talking about cosmic rays. We're talking about anything that is a stage of matter, which is plasma, which is matter at a subatomic level, right? You have charged particles that are moving in kind of very similar to light, actually, in a wave function. And what you see here, that was very interesting. So 1 o'clock universal time, so that's about 7 a.m. Eastern, 4 a.m. on the Pacific coast. I'm curious if people felt anything. So what I did see over the weekend, and what I noticed, was that the density of any kind of like of the magnetosphere, of the pressure, right, the corresponding pressure to the magnetosphere, it was so minimal that all of this was just white, right? And if you even scroll down and look at the measurement of pressure, right, same thing. The further it gets into the yellow, orange, red, the more pressure it is. There's more density, so there's more pressure because there's more particles per volume, right? And same thing, there was no pressure. It was just truly a magnetic field without any of the density or pressure of any charged particles or plasma interacting with it. And then when we saw on Sunday, here I'll go back to this here, and it got really loud. What it felt like was just pure receptivity, pure magnetism without the interaction of the plasma. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it felt like there was a lot of opportunities over this weekend, especially because the sun and Mercury were trine to Neptune, right? The moon was in Pisces, crossed over Neptune last night, and wow, and all of this opposition to Pluto and Capricorn in the conjunction in Cancer, right, with Procyon. It was as if there were so many opportunities to just let go of all of the boundaries that were isolating us and allowing that permeability and opportunities to really go deeper within ourselves to feel that connection. So I'm sure there are lots of different examples. There was, for everyone. I know for me personally, and as an Aquarius rising, for instance, this is the sixth house is the Cancer house for Aquarius rising people. So it's a real challenge to to develop oneself through this Cancerian archetype, because we're very identified with the collective conscious voice, and the resonance within ourselves is something that is where we really reconstitute ourselves, where there's a real discipline and a devotion in a lot of ways, and how we offer our service is in being this kind of more nurturing and almost motherly type of energy. So it's been an interesting journey. So what I feel like, though, is this pure magnetism. There's not a ton of bombardment, but this really powerful expression that came from the planet. And if we left space, right, especially after this super full moon in Capricorn, of like, okay, this is what's worked over the last 2 years, this is what's not working for me in terms of how I feel about myself, my own emotional security, where love and connection is coming from, it really opened us up, I feel like, and allowed much more of a pure seamless connection. And we talked about this on Friday with the astrology report, because of all of the connections to Neptune, the moon in Aquarius and in Pisces. It just makes it a lot more less difficult, I would say, with the moon in these signs to connect into something more than just ourselves. But through that, allowed an identification and a conceptualization with Mercury to, well, where do I feel? So this feels like a reflection of that somehow. Now, in terms of just the sun, I think it's interesting to also note that on Friday you see this big flare. This is like a very unstable filament that went off on Friday, and we also have this coronal hole that's facing us right now. And so the CME from that filament and this coronal hole stream is, I think it's forecasted to get here about the 22nd, which is when the sun is coming into Leo. And you can also see a ton of other sunspots that, even this one right here seems pretty big and gnarly and unstable, right? And so there is a good possibility that we're going to get impacted again by the sun by the end of the week. And this last couple of days has been an opportunity to really get into get into that receptive space to go even deeper. We're going to have a third quarter moon. Let's close that. We're going to have a third quarter moon here on Wednesday. And I think that there's some reorientation that always happens with that third quarter moon, that crisis in consciousness, and it's in a T-square, as I'm going to show you later, with the sun, obviously because it's squaring the sun, but this is also when the sun and Pluto are in their opposition, right, and bringing out this story, and always an ego battle in some way when the sun and Pluto, especially in opposition, because even stars die, right, based on the way that we understand them now, at least, is that their process as a being has a shelf life too. And as much as they're like, no, I'm a star, right? I am like the most powerful thing in this physical universe for the most part. Even Pluto is like, well, yeah, but even like subatomic particles are going to decay someday. So even you're subject to that. So our own ego, our own sense of expression, even that is up for transformation and metamorphosis. And so this opposition gets brought out, and then you have a squared moon, an Aries moon in a T-square. So we'll talk about that with the astrology. But it's really about facing ourselves, and it's really about taking real responsibility. If we want to be free, if we value freedom, if we identify ourselves as sovereign, and our subjective experience is valuable in and of itself, that we have to also take the responsibility of facing the music, basically. And so that T-square is going to bring it out within all of us, right? And this is an Andromeda Galaxy activation, because that's who is holding the resonance of being free and taking responsibility for that freedom at every stage of the way. And that's where the Libra element comes in, with its opposition to Aries, that true freedom, right? The spark of life is truly in its authenticity when it's in balance and equilibrium with the rest of the universe. And so that is the most expressed and the easiest for us to make sense of in relationship, which of course is the 7th house and the Libra house. This is part of being on Earth School, is this process. So let's start looking at the reading for today, because it really does, I think, establish that we are kind of at this interesting crossroads, or just not everybody has quite made the decision to really do that deep dive emotionally. And at the heart of that, it's going to still force almost like a cold truce, I think, in general with what is. Because again, here's the devil reversed, the Capricorn card. And I feel like this is, again, Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, right? There's a sense of profound loneliness and isolation when this card is reversed. Because Capricorn requires the group crystallization. And it's not just an individual soul acting in relationship. It is the full fractal reality that is unfolding. And so in its reversal, oftentimes it can lead to feeling outside of that, right? Or detached from that, or isolated and lonely. But I also feel like this is truly just the materium being torn away, eliminated, exposed, and ready for transfer, in this transformation process. That's kind of like a chrysalis opening. So, but it's not necessarily something that we feel, often very good about. And this is what we are going through, truly right now. So I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to check in with the chat real quick here and see. Megan says she's back, and I'm really glad. But road trips are awesome, and you learn so much about yourself when you are on that journey with people that you love, right? I mean, again, these Cancerian themes are very, very prevalent. So let's start here, right? Here's the devil, the Capricorn card, right? He's got the third eye up here. This is pretty phallic in terms of the regenerative force. You also see that there are these beings that are trapped in two cells that are separating via meiosis, right? This is how the sex cells they're not replicated. They are replicated, but this is the process of the sex cells and each individual, masculine, male or female sex organs. They multiply and divide based on meiosis, right? And so there is this like halo type of thing, right? This is the regenerative force in physical form unfolding, right? The fractal reality. So like I said, in its retrograde, this often will represent a sense of loneliness, being misunderstood. Darkness, outcast. How many of us in the last 2 years have felt this way, either within their own friend groups, their families, oh my gosh, in their families, right? People that they really have cared about in their lives that they now, there's a sense of isolation, and there's a sense of pushing people away, being afraid of other people pushing us away, right? Being misunderstood, like a lot of the negative aspects. This is Saturn at its darkest side in a lot of ways. And of course, Pluto retrograde is opposite Procyon. So that story, as for those who have already gone through the material about the Starseed origin of Procyon, is about that experience of being kind of locked out, pushed out, like not allowed back in because of this isolationist perspective here. And I think many people have experienced this in a lot of ways that have left many people feeling very misunderstood, very lonely. And of course, we know that the mental health of the last 2 years of people has been so impacted. Even for the most grounded of people, it has been challenged, right? And that's part of accepting the process and the challenge of our transformation, is we have to go through a collective dark night. And this is really showing what happens, I think, when we are still kind of like avoiding our initiatory process. And so we'll get to that with this card, number 14, the initiation, and the Count Saint Germain in its reversal, right? This is usually some sort of I'll deal with that later type of thing. Well, that's that's going to lead to some, like I said, more isolation, right? Cold truce in some ways. So we see the devil, that's reversed. I think many of us can relate to that. Also, on a larger scale, the Pluto retrograde in Capricorn is this destructive element to what is often a more of a unfolding. Now we have the Prince of Cups, right? The heir of the water. And it did come out in this horizontal fashion, which really suggests to me that we are kind of on a fence. And Mercury in particular, where it is moving to, especially once it passes its opposition to Pluto today and tomorrow, is about the intuitive weighing of options, allowing the inner voice to be the scales, so to speak. And so the Prince of Cups in this position, that often represents a person who has the intellectual values of air and the emotional depth of the water. And so a very sensitive artist, a philosopher, right? Oftentimes there is this appearance of introversion, keeping secrets to oneself. You can really feel the Syrian starseed nature come through this as well. Also a sharp mind that allows this person to choose wisely and fairly in the end. Now, the dark side of this, which is equally represented here, is that this person is reckless and very selfish and always striving for their own stuff rather than considering how it affects other people. This is going to be a theme here this week that we're all going to face with this third quarter moon in a T-square to Pluto and Pluto and the sun, carelessly sacrificing relationships in order to perfect one's own art and passion. Boy, if that did not get brought up in a myriad of ways this weekend, I mean, it really came to the surface. So now at the heart here, we're kind of like straddling this place, each of us, in some way of choosing fairly, not betraying our own sensitivity and our own depth, but also we don't want to carelessly sacrifice relationships just so that we can be right about something. And again, this is going to be because our strength really is in this structure together. And there's a lot of old stuff that needs to still be worked through, I'm sure, at this level. So the Two of Keys. So you can see, before we move on, you can see here, I mean, this is the bird diving into the abyss, into the water. And he's got this serpent in a bucket, right? And he's got this like rattle type of thing. There is a really strong shamanic component here, really, really strong. And the Syrian starseed nature is also very connected to the shamanic archetype, right? And so this is about going into this place and having the consciousness to navigate this realm. And then, so we talked about that too, about Procyon being the navigator of the Argos in some ways. So, but they're still kind of on the fence here. Like there's still, people are, I think, having, for the most part, just kind of sitting on the fence about some stuff. And this is a general reading, right? But they've tended to be, especially lately, they seem to be very relevant to the week ahead. So we see the Two of Keys as the treasure. This is where we are energetically rooted, right? The axis of our power. So this does suggest, actually, as a two of the earth element, right? The keys are the pentacles, the discs, right? This is the nuts and bolts. And it is the beginning of something. And in the traditional tarot, the Two of Discs is like a juggler, right? There's change, and there's a sense of balance here, as there is physical material change. Now, in this way, it's a little bit more, somebody came and overturned my whole life. And in the foreground, this individual has got, I mean, they literally have their mouth covered. That's really relevant to me in terms of being able to express. And as we're getting so close to Leo season, especially Mercury is going to be the first one coming into Leo. It's kind of hard to put your hand over your mouth with Mercury and Leo because you just want to sing, right? Or scream, right? Or whatever it is. Cry, just start expressing oneself. And it's so dramatic that he's just like, oh my God. And we've all done this. We know exactly what this is, which is why it's characterized in this. But the light here, the light in the little treasure chest behind him that he's not looking at. There is a great loss or disappointment. This is at the root here. Great treasure within that is always available, though, right? That's the little treasure chest in the back. So if we focus on what we're lacking, right? Not so much as to be like, okay, I know what I don't want, so now I can focus on what I do want. But if we keep focusing on what we're lacking, it really does perpetuate how we feel victimized, how we feel empty. And, Chiron's going to station retrograde this week. So prepare yourself for the, the lightning bolt or just kind of like that, searing reality of our own emptiness and victimization because we are stuck in a loop here. We can't allow ourselves, I'd say, to get lost in our loss, right? And this is, if we can root ourselves here, seeing that there are other opportunities for greater wealth, and it's waiting for us to discover. This is where Pallas Athena actually seems to be very relevant right now. She's at one of my favorite degrees, 6 to 7 degrees Gemini, which is, it's the well with the bucket and the rope. It is having a fundamental trust and cooperation with life, with nature. The well is there. It collects the water. The water comes from the rain, right? It is the process of nature doing what she does, but we are participating in order to gather those resources. So But part of this starts with a recognition that, yeah, this whole disruption, which of course is our 15 or our devil card reversed here, there is somewhere to go from here. And this light is inextinguishable because this is our connection to source, our higher self, and our spirit, right? The great spirit that resides within each of us. So this is the root here, which is still suggesting that this is an overturned reality here, but there is something to look towards in this situation. Now, the initiation in the Count Saint Germain, number 14. This is definitely the alchemy number. You know, when I was young and really into sports, I was really into baseball and softball. 14 was always my number, and it was because I couldn't have 7 on the team that I was on, and so then I was 14. Just not even realizing why. It was just like, 7's my number. 7's my number. Well, I'll take 14 because that's 7 times 2. Not realizing how directly related this is. Number 14 in the tarot is the art of alchemy, right? Temperance. It's the Sagittarius card. Now, what's interesting about this card is the Count Saint Germain is known as like the patron representative, right? The ascended master of the Aquarian age. So again, you know, regardless of what your opinion is about the New Age movement, all of these archetypes, you know, the consideration here is that we are moving into this next age where the consciousness is collective and we're all an equal participant of it. And there's no real like gurus anymore. That was Pisces, and we've had those, right? That was, specifically Siddhartha or Gautama Buddha and Jesus as the Christ, right? Those are 2 big prominent figures in terms of the age of Pisces. And there's plenty more, right? Because they represent individuals that hold, that hold the template for that age. And now we're coming into a place where that template is accessible through us by way of our connection through our consciousness and each of us emitting our own sovereign voice. Now, when this card is reversed, it's pretty, you know, it's a pretty clear indication here that we're holding on to the old resonance, right? We haven't, even if they've fallen away, we're still letting them attach. And that's something that I learned about in my own healing journey is that sometimes that even if there are, even if we've intellectually or we've kind of made the connection to certain things going on in our physical and our energetic body, and we know that we're not attached to them anymore, it's still sometimes, and they're not part of us anymore. That's the other thing too. These people aren't part of our lives. They're not part of our daily comings and goings, right? They're not part of our emotional reality, but they're still a template or a space. And attachments are so easy. It's so easy to happen, holding on to those old ways, even when those situations aren't the case anymore. And so what I see here is that there's resistance here in terms of our acceptance of the initiation, like collectively. We think the old way is our safety net. Here's our devil card, right? Here's that 2 of keys. We think the old way is our safety net, but it's really just been, you know, overdue for it to just go away and just be given back to the earth, right? And so we have to still find our happy medium here between the Great Reset, which is like, here, let's just help this along and tell everybody that we're the problem as humans, or the complete opposite, which is just like, let's just hold on and, you know, consolidate our power so much that we can't even grow. So, you know, for the most part, still stuck or afraid to move on, even if these situations aren't even here. I'd say that there's a lot of that going on, that the energetics of what's been happening are still very present, even though those situations may find themselves being resolved or at least brought up to the surface. So we have to confront what's keeping us from pursuing our highest evolution. And I think that's where this Prince of Cups is really finding, like, do I want to go down there or not? And we kind of are just going to get forced forced into it, as the Four of Swords in its reversal really suggests. And so when we look at that, it's a truce. And regardless if it's upright, if it's reversed, it looks exactly the same. Everything is in its exact same proportions, but there's just one difference here, which is it's either a cold truce, it's isolation, it's a forced restriction. It's not real peace. It's just like it has to be this way because there's only Jupiter expands so far, but can't go beyond the boundaries of what it is that is balanced out through Libra, right? And so you hit a wall in many ways. Now, Jupiter is in Aries, and Jupiter is going to station retrograde as well by the end of this month. And so there's also this sense here that we are kind of hitting, we're expanding to the, the wall of the fishbowl, so to speak, or the fullness of the crystal ball that we're looking into, right? We're gonna reach that level, and in that retrograde, we're gonna have to turn that energy now within ourselves because we've expanded as far as Jupiter is going to expand in this area. So what I do, though, at a collective level is there's still resistance, but this Two of Keys upright is very favorable as far as I'm reading it, right? That there is a beginning of something now, even in this destruction. So, but without the guidance that surrounds this, if we just look at this as this kind of cross point here, especially with the Prince of Cups, kind of like trying to take that neutral position still, and our resistance to our own initiation to our higher self, it's gonna force us into it anyway, right? But that might not necessarily be a bad thing because we still are getting that respite, even if it's because we don't want it. It's still happening. So what can we do? And we might feel too closed in by this Four of Swords reversed. Now, the chameleon at first is like, stay in the background rather than trying to be conspicuous. But imagine being this person in the Two of Keys with the treasure, and you're about to go on a rampage, right? Maybe you slow your roll here, take a breath or two, and be more of the observer. Allow the events to unfold without your direct intervention. Maybe simply being present in the situation is participating. And then contain yourself. Wait for the right time to make a move, right? And, part of this is establishing your connection, again, to your higher self, to your guides, to that which attends to you spiritually and I would say even emotionally. So when this is reversed, as it is here, it's a reminder that we've lost sight of our purpose, that we've lost sight of our connection, we've lost sight of our connection with our higher self. We never lose it. So the things that lead to this are like we get too emotionally impacted, and that's real. You have your trauma response, and that kicks in either fight, flight, or freeze, right? You can't actually establish your connection to source when that's happening. You're stressed, you're busy, you're scared, right? Being scared there's nothing that we can do about fear. It is absolutely embedded in our survival instincts as, animalistic material beings. But that, again, it's another one of those things that we face. Don't desert yourself, right? Open the door, renew the commitment. Every moment is an opportunity to make a new decision. So, and it does help to take some action towards your purpose. Even though the chameleon is like, hey, maybe you don't, participate or try to directly intervene. I'd say take some action towards getting back into alignment with your higher self so that we aren't pushing away this initiation that is truly right here. And when we look at we've looked at the chameleon, and then, it seems pretty fitting we finally get a dog here with the dog star. Procyon is in the little dog. Sirius is in the big dog, right? This is a big part of all this Cancerian energy. The dog is truly our, or the wolf, right? The moon dog. All of these things are representative of the Cancerian archetype in the 4th house. Loyalty, faithfulness, incredibly empathic and empathetic. Your loyalty and faithfulness is misplaced by what? Serving too many masters. Oh boy, this is really like, okay, get it on track. And in fact, this does talk about the One of Scrolls being on track. Like, you've already bought the ticket. I mean, I know, again, it's not popular, I guess, and that is evidenced by the fact that I don't get nearly as many views as the alternative, which is that there are multiple timelines. We're already on it. And this is the one that we all bought the ticket for, this one, right? It's about our experience going on the track and to the destination that is determining our soul and spiritual evolution, okay? And of humanity as well, right? And so what is it that what are the too many masters that you're serving, right? What is it that is driving your attention or separating your attention away from this stream of focus here, and not even focus, of direction. Now Venus has come into Cancer. This is the root system, right? And Venus is about what really matters, and it's a very symbolic type of event with 0 degrees Cancer, right? You're raising a new flag. It's a point of no return, right? This person gets on the train, and it's not like they can be like, hey, stop it. I mean, I guess you can, but not without disrupting everything else around it. So I do get the sense here that it will be forced upon us if we are not taking responsibility for the fact that we've already bought the ticket, we're already getting on the platform, we're getting on the ride, and being a conscious creator of the experience, as opposed to either feeling like a victim, constantly second guessing yourself. The Prince of Cups is going to have to make a decision, and I think that there's some very strong feels around maybe past actions that have been reckless sacrificing of relationships, and we've all done it, right? Like, we've all done it, and there's always redemption when you create space for that to come in, and this is what this full moon really seemed to be about, very strongly. So I'm curious if people have any experiences they'd like to share. Mirror the collective changes on the horizon. Also feeling well rested and generally ready for whatever comes. Serving others to prove your own self-worth to yourself. That is very, very interesting. I'm curious about the proving part and what you think about that. Like, in terms of you have something to prove. Perhaps it is more of a, when you serve others, it creates the space that when you serve others and you value them, it shows you that you also value yourself. I think that's an interesting way to consider it. I feel very rested too. My dreams last night were crazy, but I was having a blast apparently. So I feel like those Neptune trines with Mercury and the Sun and the Moon going through Aquarius and Pisces has been really like it just expanded the container, and so much love poured in over the weekend, and I feel like that has, for me, has been incredibly nourishing. And part of that was making a decision and being very clear about what I'm here to do, and not looking for anybody else's approval necessarily, but also having the courage to really face, when I've where I have cut myself off from love. And that certainly leads to our own feelings of pain and isolation. And sometimes those boundaries are important. A lot of times they really are. And this is what the dog is all about. Like, whom do you serve, right? I mean, whose agenda are you serving? What attachments are you serving rather than your connection to your higher self? These are all, I think, really good questions, and it's not a clear answer. It's individual to all of us how we are going to enjoy this experience. And I get a sense that whether we like it or not, there's going to be this kind of forced restriction. And I know, and mentally, right? The Four of Swords is about what we think, and the realm of logic and empiricism and reason. So, and communication, right? So that's the other thing too, is that we may need to kind of shut down that the more of the mental difficulties so that we can get into that space of intuition and our inner voice. And Mercury, like I said, where it is in those last degrees of Cancer, this is really what it's all about. So let's look at that, actually. Let's look at the chart for today, and we'll look at the chart for the week and just kind of go back over some of the stuff we talked about in Friday's live stream. So here's today's chart, the 18th, and you can see it right here is the Mercury and Sun conjunction. Mercury is now past the Sun. They're both still in conjunction with Procyon. They're both in an opposition to Pluto and Capricorn. The Moon, as of this morning, very early this morning or late last night, it really depends on where you are, honestly, because I have viewers from all over the world. So either wherever you are, the Moon passed over a retrograde Neptune in Pisces not that long ago. And so again, it's just kind of tapping in from the collective unconscious and our connection directly to Great Spirit or the divine source, coming right into our own internal and intuitive awareness of like, oh, I can follow my own pathway into a new identity, a new period of growth, of a new spark of creation, right? And now the Moon is going to be coming into Aries today. We can feel that starting to turn back on. And you always, with the Moon in Aries, there's always inflammation. There is like in the body, especially if you have Aries in your second house. Or maybe Aries is your sixth house, like something very, especially the second house, the nature of your body and your physical wellness is represented there. So also flared tempers, right? Very emotionally charged speech if you have it the third house. The fourth house, which is Capricorn rising, people, by the way, if the Moon coming into Aries is your fourth house, I mean, especially because it's going to cross Jupiter and meet Chiron by tomorrow. I mean, these deep wounds of safety and security and the deep family customs and ties. This is all going to be, the spark of life for the Capricorn person really is expressed in this area. And so getting into the deep sensitivity to those areas is going to be part of the experience with Capricorn. So, and it just goes all the way around. So knowing your chart really helps to see what areas of life these things are going to be bringing up. So, but you also see here, the Moon making a trine over here in late Pisces, a sextile to Pluto in late Pisces before it goes in. Again, just tapping in to everything you need is right here. It's completely accessible. It's always here. There's never a time where the Great Spirit, Source, your own spirit will ever leave. It's always there. And I've gotten to a point, at least in my own practice now, that I can establish in a very physical and energetic way that connection pretty quickly, but it's not like all the time, right? Like it's still something that I am learning to establish as more of a muscle memory, as opposed to, okay, I have to sit down and intentionally, put my focus in these places, and then I break through and I'm in this connection. But the goal, I feel like, is to always be connected to this place. And so, but either way, as we are addressing the places of our own power, it's this Moon in late Pisces. It's like, hey, it's all here, and you can't conceptualize it. You have to actually just tap into it directly through your own feels. And I think last night again was a big, or whenever this is for you, this is East Coast, Eastern Standard Time, but this sextile to Pluto, this trine over to Mercury and the Sun is establishing that as we are feeling the tension with our own power and where it's going. So it's going to be quite a week, my friends, as we've known. As we've known, Mars is in Taurus, Lilith is still in Cancer in her retrograde, Pallas Athena is, as I said, 7 degrees Gemini. Again, this is about developing the intuitive sense that allows you to feel the presence of life, right, and make it effectual in your daily life, right? And so Pallas Athena is about a strategy, right? is about wisdom in war and strategy in war. And so we do kind of have to bring that mental energy forward maybe just a little bit. And perhaps that Four of Swords reversed is the opportunity to do that. And we may not like that outcome, but it's also going to establish, again, we have to actually go, put the bucket into the well, right? And that Prince of Cups has to make the deep dive into the water if he's really going to tap into the deepest sensitivity. So there's this sense of identifying it as a strategy to intentionally have this perspective and to develop your intuition enough to not even question it, right? And this is, again, the Cancerian element is about creating the space in order to for Source to inhabit your own character and your own sense of worth, right? Your own personal sense of worth and self-esteem, which is challenged all the time. And I talked about that on Friday in my own personal way. So, and I had experiences over the weekend that I made the commitment. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to face these discomforting feelings about who I used to be or how I identified myself in this environment and push forward. And there were things that came out that were even more impactful and more expanding and loving than I even anticipated going to that. So it's there's a cooperation here always. But like I said, Chiron's going to station retrograde. We have the sun opposite Pluto. The moon in Aries is going to meet Chiron as it's stationing. So you want to be aware of that as well, is that's going to be really very, very easily felt. And it might sting a little. It might be a kind of like that inner withdrawal again of just like, you know what? I'm just going to do it myself. I don't need anybody. I can just generate my own energy within myself. I don't need anybody out there, right? Oh boy. I feel like the moon meeting Chiron as it's stationing before it really starts to move in its retrograde relative to us is this singular, like a moment outside of time and space, right? Where we get to tap in for just a brief moment here as the moon passes over Chiron tomorrow, just like, what does that mean, right? What does that mean? How is that working out for you so far? Because then you're going to have to really take a very strong inner look at that as Chiron goes into its retrograde period. And we come to a third quarter moon, like I said, on the 20th. And it's going to be in this T-square, an Andromedan activation. That's something to consider as well. And look, there it is. This is on... make sure there we go. This is on the 20th on Wednesday, and we will be reorienting ourselves collectively and individually with this third quarter moon. And again, the self-responsibility that comes along with true freedom, it's inseparable, right? That's, if you really want to be truly free, you have to understand that the Libra element is the pathway to true freedom. And you know who understands that the best is Generation X, right? I mean, the Pluto and Libra generation, it is just embedded in the souls of those individuals. And it requires a conscious cooperation with the form of the relationship. And late Aries, I mean, this is what it's all about. You eventually have to hit the boundary of the medium of growth. And that means facing that situation and knowing that eventually the seed of your own ego is going to burst open. And it's growing. We know it all is, right? And so this T-square, bringing these really big issues of power and worth are going to, and emotional security is going to come forward big time this week. So when we get to, what else is happening this week? The 21st is Thursday. It's kind of the moon comes into Taurus, so we get to have that. We get to have that experience again, where the moon is exalted in Taurus. It loves being in Taurus. It's going to meet Mars in Taurus. That has just been like, you going to anger the bull yet? I mean, let's have some patience in terms of when to actually act on things. Mars will be crossing over the point of the solar eclipse that we had, the eclipse cycle, we're still in the cultivation, right? You don't want to give up on cultivating the landscape, even though it's not necessarily happening in the way that you want. You can't give up yet, and Mars is not going to give up. So that's a good thing. And the moon crossing over that point is going to establish that sense of emotional like power in some ways, being like a superhero in a lot of ways. And of course the moon will meet Uranus and the North Node and getting, tapping into those energies again. So maybe some very dramatic or very unexpected emotional aha moments about things, meeting her own North Node, also establishing within ourselves our deep soul journey at the same time. So, and that's Thursday leading up to Friday the 22nd, which is when the sun is going to move into Leo. And we also see that the moon in late Taurus is going to have that trine. And if we remember, 28 degrees of Scorpio, this is Taurus, right? This is a Pleiadian activation, right? Big time. And being able to let go of what is built into the natural world as a system of renewal. And that requires the ending of one phase into the beginning of another. And this trine to Pluto is just like, wow, talk about deep power that we can access to be in alignment and attunement with the natural processes that are happening. Without getting caught up in somebody's narrative about it, right? Of this, the Great Reset or the Great Awakening, right? I mean, again, these are all very much branded in a way that is meant to lead people in a certain direction and to gather energy towards that idea. So it's important because, this is where the North Node is right now, to establish what's important to you rather than getting caught up in what the branding of these things has been. So that's going to, I think, be really relevant by the end of the week, because then the sun will come into Leo. We'll be officially in Leo season. Mercury is already here in Leo, is sitting on the point of the next new moon, which is, it's 6 to 7 or 5 to 6 degrees Leo, and Venus and Lilith will have already come to a conjunction at like 2 degrees Cancer. And so this idea of for all of the consolidation and connection that Cancer represents, the contrast to that is being able to operate as the observer outside of the realm of those boundaries. And there's your chameleon again, right? That's going to be, I think, when these two come together, Venus and Lilith, into some crazy, it's like getting on, wearing an invisibility cloak, right? Getting on your magnetic magic carpet in some ways, to really transcend all of the density of the dark side of the Cancer energy, of the isolationists and the consolidation to the point where there's no growth, right? We want to be able to grow. And part of that is having the observer perspective of the whole pattern, which is Capricorn. So when Pluto is in the process of destroying what was, it's really hard to be like, well, what's next? We have to establish that template within our hearts, each of us, right? And then it's through the expression through Leo and the 5th house, which is going to be part of the Lionsgate. So, it's going to be a crazy week. I'm glad people are feeling rested. Alex K says, subconsciously, you can't blame yourself for whatever happens if you did it for someone else, not trusting your own intentions, I suppose. That's interesting. I'm going to have to sit on that one. Wild dreams here, too. Slept much more than usual on the trip. Sporadic insomnia has been interesting. I'm feeling like change is imminent and much is personal. Kids go back to school in less than a month, right? And I turned 50 in 2 weeks. Yeah. Oh, then you are having a Chiron return. Because that is the path. That is the path of Chiron around its own orbit of the sun is 50 years. Wow. And I know what your chart is, so it's especially meaningful. And also, if you're talking about a Chiron return, that means that, it's going to be, the moon's going to cross over it, right? It's going to cross right over it at that time. Wow. Happy birthday, Megan. We'll do a solar return reading for you at some point. And I think you're right. Change is imminent. That seems to be pretty clear. And there's been so many opportunities with, especially the astrology, to really tap into the energetics of these, of all of the planetary configurations and the geometric connections. And, you know, human design is really grew out of this type of astrology, I would say, or just realizing that, and Edgar Casey's work, right, in terms of actual soul sojourns to these planets, because they exist at different frequencies. And they resonate at their own unique frequency, and so we have these connections to all of these things, and they themselves make this beautiful pattern, which is why I like astrology so much. So, my friends, thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so much. It's going to be quite a week. Stay tuned, either on social media, on the email list. Certainly, if you're interested in the Catalyst Classroom, we're going to be meeting sometime this week for our monthly, culmination of all the material that has been presented this month. So keep an eye out for that information as well. And I hope everybody is taking good care of themselves. Reach out if you need anything. The email is in the description box, website, all of that good stuff. And I'll see you on Friday for the Catalyst Astrology Report. And we will be coming in at that point to our last lunar quarter, which means we're preparing for our next lunar cycle along the Leo Aquarius axis. By the way, the new moon is conjunct the natal north node of the U.S., so the hits keep on coming for the U.S. natal chart. If anybody is interested in learning about other countries' natal charts and what's going on, you should leave some comments and things you'd be interested in, because I would be happy to look at other charts and see what's going on evolutionarily for those national entities as well. So anyway, guys, I love you. Thank you so much for being here. I really do truly appreciate each and every one of you. So take care of yourselves. I'll see you on Friday.